So you aren't lazy, you just weren't motivated for that particular thing. And I think that's really, it's so important for authors to realize that, because a lot of the times we look around because we're like, are we doing it right? Are we okay? We're looking to other people to see what other people are doing. And then we start to feel like, oh man, I'm just not cut out for this. But like you said, you are cut out for a certain way of doing it.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Carrington-Russell, an Amazon Top 25 best-selling author dedicated to interviewing fellow authors and professionals within the industry and hope to give you inspiration, resources, and tips on how to level up your career. And I have a very special guest for you today. We are talking to an author who has dedicated the last decade on writing 30-plus fictional books and coaching hundreds of fellow authors in overcoming their own fears and how to level up in their career. We are speaking to the mastermind behind The Liberated Writer, the one and only Claire Taylor. How are you today?
Well, I'm much better after that amazing introduction. Thank you, Kaya.
You are amazing. I am so happy and so honored that you took the time to come on this channel, because I already know you're going to help so many authors, and I know you're already doing that in your own business and your own career. So thank you for coming on and sharing some of your insight and resources with us.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Sort of get a bit of a background check on you first, though. Take me
Sure,
back
sure.
to the start. You started writing, started publishing. How did you find that for the first time? And then how did you come into this space of coaching and helping other authors?
Okay, well, I mean, I have been like kind of writing stories since I was a kid, and that was always the thing that I really loved to do as kind of my escape. And I found that it came pretty naturally as a kid just to tell stories, I mean, kids tell stories. I ended up studying it in college, and then did what most people who study it in college do. I went into teaching. And then after that, I just took the leap and started writing. And one of my friends, Alyssa Archer, who is, she's been in indie publishing for a really long time, since the early years. We were in a writing, a critique group together. And she was like, well, have you thought about like independently publishing this book you've been working on? And I had been working on a couple. And I was like, I don't know what that is. So she was kind of my Virgil into indie publishing, back in, I think, 2014. And that started it all because I was just like, oh, I can do all of it myself. I've always been doing all the work myself, so like I'll just go ahead and be an overachiever in this as well. And so I started writing comedy mostly. That was what I really enjoyed, satire and that sort of thing. Coming out of college, they really didn't like that in my college creative writing classes. It was supposed to be very serious, but that just is what kept my attention. So I started there publishing some satire, and then sort of moved into just other genres. I've always loved mysteries. I think it's really fun to write them because it's such like a brain sort of, a brain exercise to try and fake people out. And so learning how to do those was really fun. And so I kind of branched into mysteries. And then in the meantime, this mastermind group I was in, of a few other authors, we started talking about the Enneagram and, more of like a personality, sort of profile for each of us. And I had heard about it years and years ago from my mom and my sister. They had heard about it through their church, which I didn't go to. So they just came back from church and started telling me what I was, and they were wrong. But I had taken like a, sort of free online test for it. And I read the results and I was like, I don't really know about this. So that was like years ago. Then flash forward to in this mastermind group, I take a test. I test as the type that I now know that I am. And as soon as I read about it, I was like, oh shit, like this makes so much sense. and everything kind of, it was like the puzzle pieces started snapping together. Then in our small group, I saw how useful it was to know, okay, I'm motivated by this because, as I'm sure we'll talk about, the Enneagram as a measurement of motivation. I'm motivated by this thing. They're motivated by this thing. So the advice that I would give myself is not the advice that I ought to be giving them. And so being able to switch those perspectives was so useful in that group. And then I thought, well, I wonder if this would help me write my characters. And so then I started using it for my own writing, modeling characters off of it. And it was it was a really easy shorthand for me. It made sense to me. And you know what motivates your character just like that. And so you start to see what behaviors, what thoughts, what feelings come from that motivation. And so then I started helping other authors, just like friends on the phone, with their stories. And then it slowly evolved into, oh, you should offer this like for anyone. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll start this sort of side business. And then people were like, well, if this applies to my characters, does it also apply to me? And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, it's people, So then it kind of snowballed. And then I was like, okay, screw it. I'm going to go get educated in this. I'm going to go get my certifications and all that. And that's sort of the short version of how I ended up doing the coaching that I do today. It was just really useful. It just kept being useful to other people, which for my Enneagram type is a huge motivator to just be useful. So that's kind of how it led me to where I am today. And I love what I do. And I love the use that other people get out of the knowledge.
Because I will be honest with you. So I have previously done the Gallup's Clifton Strength, which I
Mhm.
have spoken about numerous times on here because I think it is such an incredible tool. Because what that offered me was almost permission to not be like any other author, to embrace who I am and how I am. And then it was a friend of mine who actually mentioned that they were doing one-on-one coaching with you. And opened me up to the Enneagram test. And I actually did it and I was like, oh, do I need another personality test? But I am such an advocate on us as authors actually fundamentally understanding who we are and getting the most productive version out of ourselves. And so I did this test and I very much realized the difference as to what it offered, whereas the Clifton was more so who I am and what my strengths are. This showed me my motivation and very clearly as well. So when I read it, I was like, oh, I do that. And I think there's kind of a difference or conversations amongst friends. Some people are motivated by money, some people are motivated by security or the lifestyle or whatever. There's all different types. And again, it gave me permission to realize just because my friend is motivated by that, it doesn't mean that I am any less or any more because I don't align with that. And so that's obviously why I really wanted you to come on here to explain that a little bit to us because that motivation is something that some of us really lack at times. We really struggle with it. So I'm excited that you're here to liberate us slightly on that. Dive a little bit into the test itself, just so those who might want to look into it know what they're getting themselves into and what to prepare for.
Right. So the Enneagram is a framework of motivation. And so there are a variety of tests to try and help you decipher what your core motivation is. Some are more or less accurate than others. And so I always say, if you're going to do a free test online, take it with a grain of salt. Read the top 3 scores that you get, read about them, see which one sort of resonates more for you. And if you're still not sure, you can come talk to me because I do this and I can help people figure that out. But the one that I recommend is generally the IEQ-9. That's from the Integrative Enneagram. It has higher accuracy. It gives you a 23-page report. And it gives me a lot of statistics on your results. And so then that helps me better coach you. But essentially, the Enneagram is a way of sort of sorting out 9 different core motivations that fuel people. So each core motivation breaks down into a core fear and a core desire. So when we are talking about fear that's stopping us in our career, the Enneagram is like, hey, look at me. It's saying, hey, I can help. So for instance, a core fear might be one of type 2. We label them 1 through 9. So type 2 is sometimes called the helper, and each of them have various names, but the helper is probably the most common one. And the core fear is to be unworthy of love, and the core desire is to be worthy of love. And now, no one wants to be unloved, right? Or unwanted, right? But this is the thing that really motivates the two. And so what results from that is that anytime they sense, they become very attuned to what people need, so that they then just move toward helping. They move toward delivering those needs for people. They often know, as a result of that sort of fear that has really honed their attention, they know what people need before the people themselves know it. So this is a very common thing. We start to see these patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving that arise from the natural attentional focus of the core fear and core desire. So people start to look very different based on the type. Now, it's not a behavioral model. It's not describing traits. It's describing these core motivations. And so once you figure that out, you start to see why your friend is really motivated to work this hard on this project, and you just are like, ugh. And you start to see that maybe laziness doesn't exist, right? Maybe people just aren't motivated by the same things and to do the same things. And maybe if you've ever been called lazy, or you've called yourself lazy, it's a way of trying to, say your teacher called you lazy, right? Maybe they were just trying to sort of coerce you into doing what they wanted, but you weren't motivated to do it, right? So you aren't lazy, you just weren't motivated for that particular thing. And I think that's really, it's so important for authors to realize that, because a lot of the times we look around because we're like, are we doing it right? Are we okay? We're looking to other people to see what other people are doing. And then we start to feel like, oh man, I'm just not cut out for this. But like you said, you are cut out for a certain way of doing it.
I am curious as to what before you delve into that one-on-one coaching, what are some of the common fears that you hear from authors, no matter what stage they are? I'm wondering if there's a lot of common fears amongst all of them until they knuckle down into this.
I mean, I would say that what I hear a lot is a fear of failure, right? But when you start to look at it a little bit closer, you go, well, what do you consider failure? What do you think that failure is going to tell you about yourself? Yeah. Right? And so it may be that fear of failure is actually, you're afraid that you're going to feel incompetent, which is the core fear of the 5, right? Or if you fail, it means you're a bad person, which is the core fear of the 1. So there's language that I may originally hear from people, like, I'm afraid I'm going to fail, or I'm not good enough. And then we need to really drill down into, well, what does that mean for you?
How quickly do you often find results with authors? Because I imagine a lot of us probably haven't even taken the time. We're so busy just trying to keep everything afloat. There's so many moving pieces in this industry. And as you said, we're looking to everyone else like, am I doing this right? Can I be doing this better? What am I missing? And the industry is always changing. As you said, you started publishing in 2014. I did as well. It's very different now to what it used to be then, and it's constantly moving. The only thing that's not really moving is ourselves. And so I think it's really important that we do get that understanding of ourselves, but we don't usually take that time. So do you notice almost immediate breakthroughs with just having one session with authors and then just feeling liberated just in acknowledging, oh, maybe this is something I do need to make time for, which is myself?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many breakthroughs that we get to have along the road of this work. And so the first one is usually just this sort of epiphany that the way you've been seeing the world is a particular perspective. You've been seeing it through one perspective, through one lens, but there are so many other ways to see it. And that in itself can be sort of a moment of, oh, then maybe I don't have to do all of the things that I feel like I have to do, right? And so one session, we can sometimes get to that. Sometimes we can just validate within a single one-off session that, yeah, that strategy, it's just not going to feel good for you, right? It's just not going to work with your natural motivation. There's nothing broken in you. It's just that it's not going to work with it, but this one will. So let's try these action steps and just try it out, see what happens. I always follow up after one-on-ones. I follow up a week after with an email just to check in, because a lot of this work, it happens slowly then suddenly. So there sometimes is groundwork that we have to lay. It's like that first crack in the foundation of our understanding of self, and then it starts to open up, and it's like, well, if my inner critic isn't actually helpful, then all these things she's been telling me all these years might be lies, right? So then it's like, well, then what does that mean for this? Does that mean that I don't have to criticize myself all the time? Does that mean that, maybe it's fine to make mistakes? So it can really sort of start to snowball in these revelations. And that's a good thing. It's an upheaval, but that's what liberation feels like. Liberation isn't pain-free. And so I think that a lot of people hope that it's going to be just a quick fix. And sometimes it is a quick fix. Sometimes it's really just like, oh yeah, that's not going to work for you. Let's try this instead. And it's like, yes, that makes so much more sense. I just needed that outside perspective. But when I do monthly coaching or even weekly coaching with authors, we get to really drill down to kind of, okay, what is this fundamental belief, or what are these fundamental beliefs that you have that are really limiting your movement? And how do we kind of start to shake those off so you have more options?
What advice would you offer for those, say for those who are watching, and they've checked out your website and they want to do the coaching, maybe they're not yet ready for it, or they don't yet have the budget for it, and they're sort of tiptoeing around the edges. What would be 3 questions or 3 prompts you would offer them just to start on this journey until they are ready to dive into whether it be the test and coaching with you and furthermore? What are the 3 prompts that you think will really help them just become a little bit more self-aware on their fears and motivations?
I think one question would be, what outcomes do I keep getting that I'm not satisfied with? Right? That's really important to look at, because a lot of the behavior that we justify leads to outcomes that we don't actually like, but because it's the only behavior we've ever tried and it feels familiar and safe, we just assume that's what you have to do. But if you start and really look at the outcomes of it, and outcomes may be, you don't have a social life, or it may be you never really put your book never really launches as high as you want because you are too busy doing other things to, really put the oomph behind it. Whatever it is, what outcomes are you just not satisfied with? And that can start to help us see that it may be worth the trouble of doing some of this work. It's so individualized that it's hard to get one question to go, but I would say figuring out what is my type. You can do that by reading about it online, or just which types really resonate with me. Is there one you can read about them? There's enneagraminstitute.com, which is a really good website that has all the types. There's enneagramspectrum.com. I mentioned, I go through the types in my book. There's all kinds of books, ebooks, print books that you can buy that aren't that expensive, that can help you figure out your type. And just starting to ask what that is a really important step. The third question is probably really starting to see where you are trying to control things that are not in your control.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's going to start to really open up your eyes to how much you're trying to do and maneuver yourself to produce something that's outside of your control. And you start to see the sort of excess of energy and the wasted energy that you're doing, and you can start to see maybe why you're so tired.
Because a lot of us do really try to control as much as we can in this industry. And unfortunately, a lot of it, as it is with and I'm a big believer in this. Obviously, everyone has their different opinions, but I believe that every release, you can have the most spectacular book and you can put your all into it. But I also think time and luck play a massive part in it as well. And unfortunately, we are not in control of those things. So it definitely makes it difficult. And then what I often see is this inward spiral happen once a book goes out and it doesn't do what we hope it does. Then there's this inward spiral of I failed, or I'm not good enough, or I haven't done this, or whatever. I see it all the time in author friends, and I felt it as well. And it's so debilitating and depressing almost. And I imagine that's probably something that you see often. So, what advice would you have for those who just need to step back a little bit from the outcome, maybe? Unfortunately, it's hard when it's our livelihood and it's our money, but
Mhm.
going into this industry, I guess to a degree, we have to accept that we can't be in control of every bit of it either.
Yeah, I mean that is one of the things that really takes authors out of the game. Is it's not the results, because we, like you said, we can do a lot of things to position ourselves in a way that we think, sort of best puts us there for the taking if success wants to, come our way. But not everything is going to be a hit. Not everything's going to work out the way you think it's going to work out. Shit happens. And if we want to stay in the game, we have to prepare ourselves inside for that. We have to build that emotional flexibility, that sort of psychological ability to know, like, okay, this isn't personal, right? Not that there's nothing that you can do to change the situation, right? Not that you have no influence, but that it's not personal. And so we don't need to let it take us down. And so this is really what I help authors build their resilience for, is times like this. Because even, I mean, you talk to so many successful authors, even the really successful authors have flops,
Yeah.
right? And if they had let that stop them, they wouldn't have gotten to the next success. And so, we really need to figure out, how am I motivated independently from results? And that's where we start to build that sustainability and that adaptability and flexibility that we need to stay in things. Is, okay, we're gonna hurt when our book doesn't do the thing that we want. It may always hurt for some people to get a 1-star review or a bad review on TikTok or something like that. But how can you take that blow and get back up again?
Yeah.
Right? How can you do it? How can the blow knock you down for less time each time? Right? How can you get back up with new ideas? Like, what do we need to put in place? What tools do you need to be able to manage that for yourself?
I imagine you have some resistance, and I'm going to specify this to authors who have been in the game for a while. I think those who have only been in for a couple of years are still very fresh and starry-eyed, which I absolutely love. Like, I love it because I remember being there, and I'm just like, yeah, get it. But there is also a beautiful naivety to it as well. And I think after you've been, say, for example, we've been doing it for over a decade now, there's been many falls, there's been many obstacles, there's been many gambles that haven't necessarily worked out. And so I imagine you probably have resistance when you have an author who's been doing it for as long as that. There are certain marketing strategies that they've been doing so long, it's obviously not serving them anymore. They're probably resistant to change at this point because they don't know what's happening now, or it's changed so much that they can't really pinpoint where they need to be aiming for. And I imagine you have a bit of resistance. That word keeps coming up. I'm like, I imagine you have
Uh-huh.
of like teaching an old dog new tricks, so to speak, opposed to newer ones.
I mean, sometimes, but usually people come to me when they're all out of ideas. The ones that are a little bit more rigid are like, all right, I've tried everything else. I've tried all the quick fixes. The things that used to work don't work. Fine, I'll try your crazy Enneagram thing. And so there is kind of an openness there. But it's also, it's gonna, the sort of approach is gonna be different based on, the type, based on the person, based on the history. And so I don't worry too much about that, because from my experience, when people hear what's true to them, they recognize it. And so I just have to help them see that. And they're like, okay, yes, we'll try this. We'll give it and we run experiments. I'm not telling you to, just upend your whole life and your whole career and just let's start from scratch. That ain't it. But there is always some resistance, just as humans, because what this is calling for us to do is try something unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And it's very common that we will continue to hold on tight to the familiar thing, even if it's not working, because at least there's certainty. right? There's certainty that it won't work. Whereas the unfamiliar thing, it's just uncertainty, and humans have evolved to not like that. It's very tough on our nervous system to have uncertainty. And so, if you can kind of think of like the person who's afraid that their partner's going to leave them, so they leave them first, right? It's like, well, at least I know that we're not going to be together anymore, right? So I don't have to sit in that uncertainty of will they, won't they, right? And so if you think about any little change that you're, being called to try, it's going to be like, this doesn't seem safe to me, right? For some types, that's the change is just, what if you just accepted the help that this person is offering you, right? Rather than being like, why are they offering this help? Are they trying to take away my, my power? What are they doing here? What if we just tried it out, right? You'll know the second that they're trying to usurp your power. You have, sort of a sensitivity to that. You'll know it. Let's just try it out. And so we do these small experiments to get through that resistance, because it's just a natural part of it. I mean, I had huge resistance to it too. Like when I was reading about some of my type, I was like, that can't be right. That can't work. I'm supposed to do what? I'm supposed to relinquish control. I'm supposed to intentionally let mistakes slide. No way. That will never work. And then you try it, lo and behold, it's not the end of the world. And your life gets a little bit better, and you get new options, and you understand yourself and feel more connected to yourself as a result.
What I love too is just your energy, all like in this. Like I imagine a lot of people feel very safe in going through this process with you as well, because as you said, it can be quite tricky, like reflecting on those things or trying to kill old habits as well. So I just want to say, like, I can imagine they get a lot from you as well, because you do just feel very warm and supportive. So again, I want to say thank you for what you do for a lot of authors. I can tell that it helps. And I know friends who it has helped. So thank you. You did mention before your own book. So I want to talk about that a little bit, because I imagine it would have been difficult having all the knowledge that you have and narrowing it down to one book. Did you struggle in writing that?
Yeah. I had to reach out to the group chat and be like, y'all, I'm doing it again. I'm trying to put too much in here. I'm trying to do too much. And that's one of the patterns that I've noticed about myself through this work is I can't just let it be. Like I'm always trying to do too much. I make the plans too elaborate, too big. And so one of the things that I do now that I've noticed that about myself, is I'll just let myself make the plan. I'll make it all very detailed, and then I'll cut about 40% of it.
Mm.
And it works out fine, right? And then I'm not stressed out all the time because I'm doing too much. But yeah, that book was that book was sort of built on the shoulders of this free course that I had, that I think I still have it available, but I need to go back through and redo it. But it was the author alignment course, and it was really looking at starting with yourself and kind of building these layers of your career. And so I tried to keep it pretty specific, and I had an editor who kept me honest about that. But yeah, it was difficult, and it was so difficult that I ended up writing a second book. So I don't know that I 100% succeeded, as it were, at keeping it to one book.
What was the name of that book again? Sorry for those who want to.
No, it's okay, because honestly, they have very similar names. Reclaim Your Author Career is the first one, and that's kind of the basic one. You can see it's a little bit thinner. I was a good girl there. And then Sustain Your Author Career is kind of, we go a little bit more in depth into the author sort of mindset stuff, and that's a little bit thicker. So yeah, Reclaim and Sustain.
What would you say is the greatest obstacle for authors sustaining a long-term writing career? For example, whether it's just not understanding current market, finding time to actually write, continuing and not burning out, or burnout is an obstacle in itself. What are the most common things that you've noticed throughout your years in doing this?
Well, I'm obviously biased because I'm coming at it from my specific angle, but I would say that just across the board, it's fear.
Yeah.
It's fear that causes us to do things that do burn us out, that do, cause us to spend too much time doing research and not writing the book, that causes us to, forego boundaries that would protect our time to write the book, or that that cause us to, sometimes authors will do things that are pretty unethical because they're so afraid of something else, right? They're so afraid of failure or looking weak that they go too far into something. So that it's across the board. It's fear. It's the 9 core fears, because they're really good at parading as common sense
Yeah.
and wisdom.
Yeah.
So they'll tell you, no, 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 you can't trust anyone else. Or the fear will tell you nobody's coming to save you, right? And that may have been the case at some point earlier in your life. But boy, it's bleak to try and publish and think that you're all on your own.
Yeah.
Right? It's a solo endeavor, but that's just hard. You can't take as many risks. You're afraid to take risks because you think no one will show up if this goes south.
I actually really reflect on this, and I feel the need to share this story as well for those who are watching, because for the longest time, like, I very much love my, manifestation and law of attraction and tension and things like that. And for the longest time, I kept listening to all the different books about money blocks and why I couldn't go to the next level of my career, while why I was still going on and off full time and then having other jobs and careers. And it wasn't until I had a very vulnerable conversation with 2 good author friends of mine who were financially a lot more successful than I was at the time. And I want to put out there that I've always celebrated that. And I absolutely love everybody's success. And for me, it was just more of an impatience and a tiredness that my journey had not yet gone there into that direction. And I didn't know where I was going wrong. And that week, they had contacted me after that, both separately, like, this is what I can do to help you. This is what I can do to help you. Let's do this. And it was such a powerful message for me, as you just said, that there are people there to help. And the moment that I actually accepted what they were willing to offer, my career went boom. And it's just wild. And it wasn't even necessarily about the financial blocks or the things that I was looking at that I thought was the problem. And those things, like, obviously, there's a bunch of other things you overcome and you're just like, as you level up. But I feel like there gets to a point in your career, and maybe, I don't know if people have used this type of language as they've come to you, but they see a glass ceiling, so to speak, and they're like, I'm here and I just don't know how to go here. And I imagine that exploring the fears as you do and actually discovering what the fear is itself, it sometimes isn't even what you think it is. And then I imagine they probably see that increase once they figure it out and they start working on it for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, attention is, so I do a lot of work with attention because when we're looking at fear, we're looking at attentional patterns.
Yeah.
And if you think about, something jumping out at you, all of your attention goes to it, right?
Yeah.
That's the threat. And so these core fears are functioning sort of under our awareness, but what they're doing is they are pulling our attention toward looking for them and looking out for them. And so then it starts to narrow. The more this fear starts to, get going and, really start churning inside of us, the more narrow our attention becomes. It's like we're wearing blinders. And so, if you have a fear of like the 8, fear of being harmed and controlled, type 8 is the challenger, often called the challenger, the fear of being harmed and controlled. And what results is this sort of attention toward anything that looks like it's trying to harm you or control you, to the point where things that aren't may feel like they are, right? Someone offering you help may feel like trying to control you, right? And so then we start to really filter out those opportunities and those paths forward for us, those really wonderful things that could help us get to the next level, because it's like not even an option in our brain, right? Because we're like, no, that's how you get harmed and controlled and die, right? It's like, for our nervous system, it's like, that will kill me. So once we start to really look at that, once I start to talk with, like, say, just to continue the example, an 8, and it's like, well, is that going to harm you? Like, it may have been in your past, like, that there was someone who offered you help and then was like emotionally manipulating you, and you armored up against that and said, never again, right? But what if this person is just like a type 2 the helper and they just really love helping people, or they're a one, the reformer, and they really care about what you're doing and want to see more of that in the world. Like what if it's not that fear? And then suddenly, like you said, it's like these things start to show up, and it's not they've been there, but we haven't been able to see them. Right. And so our friends have been going crazy, like, hey, it's right here, because they're a different type and they can see it. And you're like, I don't know what that's about. I don't know what you're talking about. That doesn't exist. Right. Until we really deal with these fears that are kind of clouding our vision.
I actually want to talk a little bit about you coming into this space because I imagine it was scary. I imagine it was scary to say that you are an expert of you can assist this or whoever it may be, and building the platform, building the coaching, building the one-on-one, building courses. It is very foreign if you don't come from a background like that. So how did you go in developing that, and what advice would you offer to anyone who is looking at whether it's becoming a resource through a podcast or doing their own coaching, whatever it may be? What advice do you have to building into that space?
Yeah, I mean, it was scary, and for me, I was always asking, like, am I good enough to be doing this? Like, is this? But if it seems like I can help someone, if it seems like someone's out there who I'm like, oh, this may solve this problem, this may fix this problem for you. I get so much joy out of that sometimes I forget to be scared, right? And so it wasn't, it would be, I think there would be different challenges for different fears. But my fear was always just, how do I make sure that I'm not causing harm and you know, not letting my own ego get in the way of this or lead this. And so I think if you're going to do this work, it's really, really important to do the work yourself before you start trying to help others through it, because there are so many blind spots that we end up with that we have to weed those out. We have to know, for me, I'm like, okay, one of the things of my type is that sometimes we are speaking and we don't feel like we're criticizing, but it's read to other people as criticism, right? And to us, because we have such a strong inner critic, it's like, oh, you think that was criticism? Like, you should hear what's going on in here. No, I was giving you a compliment, right? But as someone who's going to be talking to people in very vulnerable places, I had to do a lot of work around that to just, reflect and say, okay, am I actually approaching this with judgment? And how do I need to weed that out of myself and put those checks on myself? So I think there's a lot of work to do around that, but also just, I don't know. I just think you will know if you can start to learn how your ego, and when we're talking about the Enneagram, the ego is sort of this armor that we create of personality to protect us from our core fear. And it makes us act in strange ways. But if we can bring some self-awareness to that and say, why am I doing this? Right? Because if you're doing it for fame or fortune, I got bad news for you. If you're doing it, to gain power, that's maybe something you want to inspect, But if you're doing it because there's just like sort of love that's driving you, I think that just let that keep driving you, and notice when you're scared and you're pulling back, and also have a lot of support. You gotta have your group chat. You gotta have those people who you can check in with, who will be honest with you. And so you can go, hey, I don't know if this is like me freaking out or if this is my wisdom. Is this my gut or is this my fear? And who can help you go through that? Because, I tell people with Enneagram work, there's some of it that only you can do, right? Only you can do your work, but you will not keep doing it without other people supporting you. It's not a solo endeavor. And there are times when we just cannot reflect on ourselves. We've just hit a blind spot, and we need to go ask someone who's honest with us. Hey, can you see this thing? Because I can't see this thing, and just hope that they will trust that we can receive their honesty. But yeah, as far as building the platform, I always went on a needed basis. If I saw that people were asking for it, I was like, yeah, I'll give this a shot. I'll create a little something. And then, but there are other approaches. There are plenty of other approaches. Some people will test it out. I usually go have sort of it has to be something I like to do. It has to be something I feel is a contribution I'm somewhat good at. And it has to be something that people want. And so that really narrows down the field.
I love that. Like, I feel so inspired talking to you, and I hope that others who are listening to
Oh,
because you can tell you love what you do and it comes from a really wholesome place. Not that you need my tick of approval or anything like that, but I just
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm not going to turn it down.
that's what I'm here for. I'm kind of curious then, as an author, what would you say that your personal greatest challenge has been, but your greatest achievement has been in your career so far?
I think my greatest challenge has always been me. Um, it is just me and the sort of inner battle. So, for those who are wondering, I am what's called the type one, the reformer. And so, yeah, I have this inner critic, and she's kind of a bitch. And she'll take on different voices. Sometimes she's a he, sometimes, it's, oh, there's my old coach, right? Chiming in. Oh, there's that old teacher. Oh, and so she shows up a lot. And that was a thing that just really made it so that it was not fun to be me. And so it comes and goes, it comes and goes. Sometimes life is just stressing me out, and that voice is a little louder, and it's a little bit harder for me to tell her, I get it. All right, I'm going to do this thing anyway, but yeah, I do take, I do feel pride in my sort of tenacity of keeping going, even though a lot of the times it was very unpleasant. And then, yeah, I think my greatest success is just to keep going and to keep being, to really make the goal be my connectedness to myself.
Yeah.
In a world that wants to disconnect people from themselves very badly.
Oh, yeah, I hear that loud and clear. What would be a parting piece of advice? So, for those who are listening, if they are to take anything from this conversation that we've had, what would you like to say to them?
I think there's a lot of hope in what I do with people. I think a lot of the times we feel like because things haven't worked out the way we want, or because our career hasn't made us feel the way we hoped it would at this point, whether that's someone making good six figures and they're like, when am I supposed to feel successful? Right? Whatever it is that you're struggling with, there is a lot of hope that can be found through this work, and you don't see it yet. Right? Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And so that's one of the things that I feel very lucky to be able to help people see, is that there is still a path forward. Even when you don't see it, there's a path forward that you can feel good and motivated to walk down. And sometimes that's not in publishing, but it's okay as long as you feel like you are, yes, this is right for me. Right? That's really what we're trying to get at, is that feeling of rightness, that wholeheartedness, that wholeness and connection. That's what we're all seeking. And so we think it's going to just show up on our doorstep. And then when it doesn't, we can sometimes feel like we're out of options. And so, yeah, there is pain, right? What I do is I take people on a bunch of heroes' journeys, right? We have to go into the unknown world. We get that elixir, and then we come back out, and we have this return, and we have this new tool that we can use, in the ordinary world. But there's hope. It's going to require some courage, right? But you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
There's me, there's your friends, there's a whole community of authors now who are using the Enneagram in this way. And there is always a good path forward.
Let us know where do we find you? What do we need to know that's coming out? And where do we sign up?
So you can find me at liberatedwriter.com. That's where everything will live. Right now, I am working on a Kickstarter that's going to launch sometime this summer for a book called Write Iconic Characters. So this is the first book that I'm putting out that's just here's how you use the Enneagram to write characters that just fucking rock, of any type, you know? So I'm really excited about that. This has been a really fun project. So if you go to Kickstarter and look up Claire Taylor, you can find the project, or you can look up Write Iconic Characters. I don't have like a cool link yet for it, but that's going to launch this summer. And then I do the Liberated Writer 5-week course. That's really, I would say that's like, I shouldn't pick favorites, but that's my favorite because we have 5 weeks of material, and then we do 2 live calls a week that are an hour and a half. So one's like discussion group call, and one's a Q&A, and we just really get to know each other. And I just wrapped one up with 30 authors, and it was just this really nice space where people get to be vulnerable. You get to really explore other types with other people, and see that there are these other people doing this work, and that everyone is really sort of has these struggles, even the people who you think are really confident and know exactly what they're doing. None of us really know that. So it's a really great time. The Liberated Writer 5-week course, that's at liberatedwriter.com. And then I also do one-on-one coaching. You can find that there. And then I will also be doing a virtual conference, probably late summer, early fall. And yeah, so anyone who's interested in that, we're going to go into some really deep, fun, complicated self-awareness, sort of learning about yourself, from yourself kind of stuff. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a 2-day virtual conference kind of, but we're going to be doing breakout groups and Q&As and all kinds of stuff. So if you want to meet other authors who are doing this, that would be a great place to go. And I think that's it. Oh, my books, they're also on the website, liberatedwriter.com. So if anyone wants to go check those out, and if you sign up to my email list, which if you're interested in any of this, just do that and you'll know when things are coming. That's at liberatedwriter.com. When you sign up, you'll get 100 free mindfulness practices for authors that you can start working on.
I want to add on that as well. I have been subscribed to your newsletter for a couple of weeks now, and there is actually so much good stuff in there. And I can genuinely say, when some emails you kind of get, you're like, meh, but you spend a lot of time in what you're offering, and you give like such great advice on there too. So I would highly recommend subscribing as well, because I've got some good information from there. So thank you. Yeah, you've got a lot coming on. I'm excited to see it all unravel. So thank you so much for coming on here today. And I really do hope that those who are listening, you have inspired and given them a lot of hope. And I love, as you said, that there is a way forward, and it's a good path. So if you need help in finding that path, of course, you can go through any of these courses or one-on-ones with Claire. So I would highly recommend to check it out. But thank you for coming on. And until next episode, guys, we'll see you then.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye, guys.